I am Sarah Miller-Davenport. I'm the Graduate Program Director at the Committee on Global Thought. I am also a historian and author of the book Gateway State, which examines Hawaii statehood and the intersection of global decolonization and civil rights in the United States during the Cold War. And I'm very excited to have all of you here to learn more about our graduate program at CGT. And I'm really excited to have Beth Semaya, who is our executive director, and alumni Nikki Erlick and Aliza Waheed. So very quickly, I'll just introduce our alumni. Nikki Erlick is a writer and editor. Her debut novel, The Measure, was an instant New York Times bestseller. The Today Show and Jenna Bush Hager's book club pick, and the Barnes & Noble Discover pick. Her work has appeared, in addition, of course, in her best-selling novel, her work has appeared online with New York Magazine, Newsweek, Harper's Bazaar, Literary Hub, and Vox Media. She graduated from Harvard and was an editor of the Harvard Crimson, and she earned her master's degree in global thought in 2017. And Aliza Waheed is a very recent graduate, class of 2021, I believe. Is that correct?
2022, last
2022.
year.
I'm sorry about that. Class of 2022. And she hails from Toronto, Canada. And since the summer, she has been working since graduating from CGT, she has been working for Trilogy International, a UK-based international tech and talent firm as a consultant. And let's get started. So we're going to have a conversation. We're going to open among me and Beth and Aliza and Nikki, and we're going to open up a Q&A for the last 15 minutes of this session. So please post your questions in the Q&A box. And just to let you know, many of our kind of frequently asked questions that are more technical in nature about the application itself are answered on our website. So this is really an opportunity for you to ask more substantive questions about what CGT is all about and what the graduate experience is like at CGT. So for Nikki and Aliza, what originally drew you to CGT, and why did you choose this program over other MAs? So I'll throw it over to Nikki first.
Sure. I think it came down to two things. And first, it was that I chose Columbia because of just obviously the reputation of the institution, also the fact that I knew that now I was in graduate school, I wanted to really focus on kind of launching my career. I felt like being in New York City, having those resources right at your doorstep would be a great kind of place to start a profession. And then CGT specifically, for me, I was really drawn to the interdisciplinary nature of it. When I enrolled, it was only the second year of the program, so it was still very new. And that was exciting to me too. And it still is a very young, new program that, I think is shaped a lot by the student experience. And so I was drawn to the interdisciplinary nature of it and the fact that, I knew that I was coming from college, I'd studied kind of global literature and foreign languages. I wanted to keep studying things from this global perspective, but I didn't want to be kind of trapped in any one narrow field. And I mean, in my 2 semesters there, I ended up taking classes at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the School of International Affairs, the School of Journalism, the School of the Arts. So I don't think there's any other program where I could have taken classes at 4 entirely different grad schools that are all at the top of their field. It was just a remarkable opportunity to really explore and continue kind of growing as a student. And I just really don't think I could have had that anywhere else.
And just to clarify, so the Committee on Global Thought is within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences at Columbia. And School of International and Public Affairs, School of the Arts, those are separate schools. And CGT students are able to take classes, any graduate level class that they're able to enroll in at Columbia.
Yeah, which I feel like is very, very unique.
Yeah,
it is.
I mean, it is. Yeah. It's probably the most kind of open MA program that you can find. So So Aliza, what drew you to CGT, and why,
Right.
why CGT over other MA programs?
Well, I mean, a lot of points that Nikki kind of just covered here that can definitely relate to, particularly like I mentioned earlier, kind of graduating amidst COVID. I knew my academic journey wasn't over in like the, early fall, or I'm sorry, summer of 2020. And I knew there was definitely more that I wanted to explore. And I feel like I kind of missed the chance on. However, that versus, going maybe straight into, I'd always wanted to pursue a law degree. However, doing a JD, and I'd gotten into another program in London that was more specifically like a Master of Public Policy. So there were a lot of those like more, 2-year program degrees that I thought originally like that was going to be my plan. However, then I came across Global Thought, and I thought this was actually like what Nikki said, like a pretty perfect opportunity at that exact time, like point in my life where I was able to, you can take classes at law school, and I was able to take classes at SEPA and actually really put together sort of, fuse the various different fields that you were interested in, and actually kind of come out, with a better sense of who you are and what you actually want to do before, committing to like a 2-year program. I think that was definitely the sort of step I needed to take in my sort of academic and professional path. But obviously it's not going to be the same for everyone, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of CGT. It's not going to be the same for everyone. Everyone's going to have, there's a core, there's a CGT core and required courses for our students. That's about half of the classes you'll take, and then the rest are open, right? Which means there's a really good balance of forming a cohort and moving through the program together as a cohort, and having a kind of shared language or shared questions. And at the same time, everyone's going to have a very different experience because everyone's going to be taking classes, at, all the different schools at Columbia. So we've touched on this already, but, I would like to dig in a bit more into what makes CGT unique. So I'm actually going to throw it to Beth, our executive director, first. And Beth, if you could introduce yourself for our audience, please do.
I'm Beth Semaya. I can speak from personal experience about what makes CGT unique because I've been part of the Columbia University community as a student, as an associate dean, and now as an executive director. So I really have a wide scope of experience with Columbia. One of the things that just constantly blows me away about CGT are the students. It is truly a global community. Our current cohort right now has 39 students. They're from 25 countries, and many of our students have multiple citizenships. So by default, just automatically, it invites multiple perspectives. And then if you couple that with our faculty who are curated from top thinkers from across the university, multiple disciplines, you add this other layer of perspective. And then finally, our pedagogy is really designed to invite students to think critically, and to think critically about pressing global issues about the world and their relationship to the world, no matter where they are. So I have never seen a master's program quite like this. It is unique by design with the pedagogy, but it's unique with the students, and everybody has a different experience. Touching on what Nikki and Aliza said, since you're taking different classes, you're learning different things, but when you come together as a very close-knit cohort, and when you come together in your core classes, you're sharing those outside learnings, and it's just exponential. So I think those three factors together, the faculty, the students, and the pedagogy combined, really create a powerful learning experience.
Yeah, and if I could jump on that, because I think what's interesting is not only kind of the diversity of the students that you mentioned, just in terms of what countries they come from, but I think at so many grad programs, grad school is already challenging. There's already a lot of pressure you put on yourself. And then in so many programs, it's really competitive because everybody's studying the same thing and they want to go on to do the same thing. They all want to be, lawyers. They're all going to be academics, in the same field. And so there's that inherent competition. But with CGT, you just don't have that because everybody has a different everyone has different goals, different paths. like in my cohort, people were going into finance, they were going into government work, they're going to nonprofit work. I was going to journalism and publishing. And so, you're not competing with each other, you're only learning from each other and just kind of collaborating and helping each other, grow and discover. And I think that is just a really, great environment to be in grad school, and really conducive to kind of learning and just self-discovery.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And I'm going to steal that for a future information session. But I mean, I started at CGT this summer, and I've had a lot of different experiences in higher ed in the US and in the UK. And, it's just so wonderful to see how the cohort comes together so quickly. I mean, it's a short master's program, but it's an intense one. And I think people really do, very quickly, come together and rely on each other, both intellectually and emotionally. And, my sense, having met alumni since I started and doing these information sessions with alumni, is that, it something about CGT, there's some magic that just creates just a really warm, sort of close-knit environment for the cohort, that people carry that with them beyond their degree, and continue to be in contact with each other. So Eliza, what do you think?
Well, I was just about to, I mean, it sounds so cliche when you say it really does feel like a family, but I can't really not say that, because like what you mentioned, you just spend an incredible amount of time with these people every day. And like what Nikki mentioned, it's just, I wish I had really been more present in the moment. Obviously you're stressing about finals and you kind of let the time slip, but just the ability to have that safe space with, your peers and even like the professors. I miss, when I last for like that alumni reunion, like it was just so great to see everybody, because you really miss having that space with, to actually like explore and feel totally comfortable with each other. And, the great thing about being like a global program is, a lot of my friends now, they've, they're all over Europe, they're back in like, East Asia. So, obviously I miss them like every day. And a lot of my close friends that are in New York are still just from the program, but, you kind of have this ability, like we're scattered throughout the world. So, you ever end up in London, there's always someone you can like reach out. So it's just exciting to see what your cohort gets up to after graduating. So.
Yeah, and I think, there's a connection to the interdisciplinary nature of the program, and that, and the idea of global thought, there's no kind of like canon, there's no literature. And so, that does create a kind of openness and, less of an emphasis on sort of, that sense of competition, or the idea that like everyone, needs to be up on a certain field, right? And that, I just think, right, everyone's bringing their own experiences, everyone's bringing, their different disciplinary backgrounds from undergrad, and the idea is that we're all still very much learning from each other. I mean, the instructors and the faculty too, learning from their students, and the curriculum changes every year to reflect that. I mean, we're constantly updating the MA seminar, so that we make sure we're sort of addressing the most pressing global issues and responding to what our students are interested in. And so yeah, I just think that helps foster, among other things, that helps foster a really sort of an environment of openness and very kind of healthy.
Sarah, to add to that, it's also a culture of inquiry. And I see it with the faculty when they get together, because they are all housed in different programs. So they're not just getting together with other historians or other global scientists, climate scientists. When they come together, they get so excited because they're talking about topics from their particular disciplinary expertise, but without trying, there's no one-upmanship. It's really saying we're committed to posing thoughtful questions, critical questions, and we're looking at it through multiple disciplines. And that in itself is just exciting. It's scintillating. And you feel that energy from the faculty, and then you see it with the students. It's absolutely contagious.
Mm-hmm. I just want to take a minute to remind those of you in the audience to, if start posting questions in the Q&A now as they come up, so that, and we'll address them. Either some questions might be addressed in the chat if they're relatively easy to answer, but again, we'll have room at the end. We'll have time at the end for questions. So as they come to you, please post them. So, one question I think some of our applicants might have, and again, we've touched on this, but, what makes CGT different from an international relations program or an international affairs program, because some of you may also be looking at international affairs or international relations programs, right? There isn't another global thought MA out there. And so Beth, if you could address that, what do you think makes CGT different from IR or international affairs?
I think the distinction is the approach to inquiry, that it really takes a transnational, multidisciplinary, and interdisciplinary approach versus saying, we're going to look at policy this one particular way with one particular set of questions and answers. Instead, I feel like it's far more expansive than that, since it's looking at things through different lenses. And it really invites that kind of intellectual curiosity and critical thinking that is about thought. It isn't just about solutions. It's about posing questions to solutions and analytical thinking. And I hear it from our alums when they come back for the holiday party or the reunion, that in whatever respective industry they go into, that they are using those tools. They're using those skills of analysis, of synthesis, of looking at different patterns, and those are all ways of thinking. So it isn't really just the kind of learning that goes on you can't get in a textbook. Mm-hmm. And I think that in some other programs that may be the case. But Elisa, Nikki, what do you think? You were in the program.
The great question. I mean, definitely everything that you covered, but I kind of think back to my time as a student, and obviously I had a lot of friends that were in SEPA or, were in MA of Poli-Sci or even the PhD political science students. And it's just very it's just kind of essentially a totally different program. And you're very, very focused in on, the approach, the canon, the processes, the methodology that you use within those respective fields. And obviously, if you are an IR student, that's something that they would do. However, the thing that I liked about global thought was that I knew I didn't want to do, a poli-sci degree. I didn't want to go specifically within those, not that there is obviously value in for example, we do a lot of that in Professor Tajbash's class. You are exposed to a lot of IR theories, but the ability to, what you mentioned, you kind of use different critical thinking approaches instead of, what is more traditionally associated with those fields. And that's what I kind of loved about being able to, just pick from, what's already been given and kind of make your own thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't speak as much to that because I didn't really even consider the other programs like that. So I don't know quite what happens there. But I think what I liked, because I was coming from a journalism background, that was what I was looking at going to professionally. I just liked kind of the really contemporary aspect of global thought, and the fact that, as Elisa said, it's not all theory. There's so much of kind of just practice, and the fact that every week we'd have a different discussion about a different absolutely urgent happening right now kind of global issue. And for me, as someone who's interested in writing about these issues as a journalist, just the chance to kind of talk about all of these different issues from a different perspective that were happening in the news right now, just felt like a really unique element to the program that you don't get as much in other kind of more theoretical degrees.
And I think it's worth pointing out, right, this is not a sort of professional, pre-professional degree, right, in the same way that, a degree from SEPA would be, where, you're sort of training you to work at the UN or, at an international NGO, which a lot of our students want to do that. but I think there's a sense at CGT, like you'll learn the practical stuff on the job, right? Like we don't need to teach you sort of the nuts and bolts of, how the UN works or whatever, right? But that we're going to equip you with the skills to ask the kinds of questions that are going to be relevant in your future career, right? To be able to, again, to think critically, and that you'll be exposed to all of these ideas, right? You're still well equipped for those kinds of careers, but it's much more of an intellectual experience.
Right. And if I could just add to that, like, I think I just remember like all of my super friends would be like, I have to write my 8th policy paper this week. And it's very, like what you said, learning just the nuts and bolts of how to be in those certain positions. And obviously there's value in that. That's what you sort of want to do. Or, sustainability management program, you're actually learning how to do like accounting for sustainable finance. But I think those are very specific things where I love that in global thought, like we got the chance to, write a policy paper, learn how to do that, but you also get exposed to other sorts of, ways of thinking and writing, like in various different formats and mediums, which was, obviously like really rewarding and a lot of fun too. So
I want to pivot a bit to the actual experience of being a CGT student, and what our program is like. So one question that we get is, how do we connect with students beyond the classroom? I mean, what are sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, the extracurriculars that CGT offers? So Beth, do you want to talk about that? Because we have actually a very extensive programming for a very small program.
I think that the opportunities are robust. We have opportunities for students to connect in co-curricular ways, in social ways, in professional ways, academic ways. And so, for instance, we have our lunchtime seminar, and to the extent possible, we always try to feed our students. So we try to schedule our and surround mealtime. But so we have lunchtime seminars, and Kevin Funk, Professor Funk, leads them, and he invites a scholar who comes and discusses, a current, again, to Nikki's point and Sarah's about the curriculum constantly changing. The world is constantly changing. So we're really trying to get leading edge thinkers in about their scholarship about the most relevant global issues of today. And that's, one opportunity. We have our huge public programming series this year, which is called Reimagining Global. It started out with, and when we say a public program, that means that everyone's included. So all of the participants on this call, mark February 16th on your calendars and come over to the Pulitzer Hall for our public program. This is second in the series. The first was Reimagining Global, our extreme crises, the only way forward. This one is the place of the university in Reimagining Global. And then late spring, we're going to have one about the environment. But these are other opportunities for students to hear from scholars within Columbia University and beyond, Columbia's walls. Other scholars are invited as well. But we also have our advisory council committee members who attend. We have industry experts. So it ends up being a fabulous networking opportunity as well. We have our Careers Without Borders series, which really hopefully gives students all of the skills that they need to successfully launch in May. We have research opportunities for fellows and internships. I've been working with 2 of the master's students this year with Professor Funk. We're developing a global thought leaders program for professionals, and their work on the program has been invaluable. So there are any number of ways, socially, co-curricular, and academically, to get involved. The only complaint I ever hear is that the students want more time. It's that they want to, they're having such a rich experience, they want more of it. And that's a complaint I can live with.
Also, we offer a class in the spring, Interdisciplinary Approaches to Global Thought, where you can get credit for attending CGT events and other events at Columbia and writing about that. There's more to it than just attending, but we really encourage students to take every advantage they can while they're at Columbia, because there's so much going on, and there's just a tremendous amount going on at CGT. So another question we get that is about what kind of support we provide to students. In the UK, we would call it pastoral care. I don't know if we have any students from the UK here tonight. So, and I mean, I'll just say in answer to that question, like, we provide a tremendous amount of support to our students. And, again, I've worked in higher ed for many years now, and I don't really think there's any master's program like it in terms of the level of support that we provide to students, both in terms of, we really work very closely with students on their essays, your capstone essay, which you turn in the spring. We guide you through the fall semester and the spring semester with a series of iterative assignments and advising sessions. And we provide advising on whatever you want advice on. We're here. We have a very warm, inviting, open office for students to come in and chat with us about whatever's on their minds. And we interact with students a lot too, because we have so many events, right? And we have so we have the more kind of intellectual events, like our Reimagining Global series. We also have just like lunch with Yasmin Aragas, with one of the CGT faculty. And so again, I think we go to great lengths to really foster an environment that's welcoming to our students. And often, frankly, in a lot of master's programs, the MA students are sort of not prioritized, in various graduate programs. But that is not the case at CGT at all. So I don't know if Beth, you have anything to add to that.
I think that you use the word pastoral care. I think of it as an artisanal approach. I think that the students really receive such an incredibly hands-on experience from the staff, from faculty, from alums, and it's based out of shared interests and caring. It really is. I've never seen anything like it. We had an alum who reached out to me because she's thinking, this was a few months ago, she said to me, she was thinking about a doctoral program, and this is her area of expertise, what she wants to study. Do I know anybody who I could connect her with? And I thought of a couple of our faculty members who would really be good thought partners for her in thinking through, if a PhD is the right route for her. And I wrote to them, and instantly they wrote back and said, of course, I would love to have a conversation. So it really isn't just current students. And Lisa, as you said, it sounds cliche, but it's true. You become part of the CGT family, and it's with incredible thought and care. We want our students, well, they're with us to succeed, but they're always our students, right? They become, part of this family, and we want to make sure that our alums are always connected with us. Columbia University does great outreach in keeping their alums engaged. CGT is committed to doing the same thing. We're trying, really trying to make sure that we're in touch with our alums, that we give them opportunities to stay with us. So they're constantly growing. And our current students, I have never, for the master's essay, I will say this, as somebody who has a master's and PhD from Columbia, I have never seen the level of care these students get, shepherding them through the experience, but without it being coddling. It strikes the right balance to say, intellectually, you need to be here with this essay. I'm going to help you get here, but I'm not doing it for you. And in that way, it helps these students stretch. But while they're stretching, they know they're nurtured. It's a wonderful combination. And it's a warm environment. It's a good place to be. It's a good place to work. It's probably a very good place to study. and to be affiliated with. And certainly our faculty members say that. And the advisory council members, when I meet with them, they always say it's their favorite part of that day or that week, knowing that they're going to have the opportunity to interact with faculty and students from the program.
So I want to make sure we have time for our Q&A. We're pushing up on that time for the Q&A. But so quickly, I want to pivot a bit and talk about sort of post CGT life, and to go back to our alumni and to ask, how did CGT? What is your current job? I mean, we've briefly introduced your current job, but what is your current job, and how did CGT prepare you for that? So Nikki, if you could chime in here on that.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe a little bit more of an anomaly in CGT in terms of kind of pursuing a more it's like sort of creative artistic career. Although everyone is, as is mentioned, like a very creative thinker at CGT, which is really amazing. And so my first job after was as a travel writer, a travel journalist, and everyone, when I was sort of applying and interviewing, the global thought degree was just like the only thing people wanted to talk about. It was the point of fascination on my resume. It never caused confusion, only ever sparked just like conversation, like that sounds really interesting, can you tell me about that? And particularly because I was going into obviously journalism and kind of the travel sphere, having this global background, this global perspective was extremely helpful. And now in my role as a novelist, surprisingly, the MA is also like the main thing that gets brought up to me all the time. And because it's in my sort of bio on the book jacket, and whenever I'm like Zooming with the book club, I think they want to talk about the book, but the first question that they want to talk about is, can you talk about this global thought MA? Like I have a niece who might be interested. I have some, I'm going back to school myself. It's always a point of conversation. And I think that is really helpful in any career, because what you want is to have people think that you're an interesting, kind of curious person, and to have something to talk about in an interview. And this MA always has done that for me. It's pretty amazing.
Elisa, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Could not relate more, especially to the interview part. Like all of my friends and I have had multiple experiences with it where it's never been a negative thing. It's always been something that like we're happy to explain, and they're very like, they want to learn more, and they have a lot of questions, and they think it's just super cool. And obviously like the name Columbia plus the ability of being like it is a disciplinary program, they're like, whoa, like this is like, I didn't even know this was the thing. Like I would have done this program, like is what one interviewer said to me once, and I was like, oh. But it just, again, like what Nikki mentions, it definitely conversation started, and you're able to kind of just show like what you got and like what you put into that program at the same time. And also just shows a level of critical thinking that you must have then as a person and as like a professional in order to have completed a degree like that, and then translate it. Because it's funny, like now I'm working in tech, which is not necessarily really remotely close to what I did my, dissertation on. But at the same time, obviously, like throughout the seminar, there was a lot of like discussions about just obviously technology and like the, role that it serves in our society, et cetera. So just being able to like fuse a lot of different ideas at the same time, I think has been really helpful. So it just goes to show that it's, you can really, make the most out of it, I guess.
Yeah. And I did an internship, I think in my second semester in the city, I think I did 2 days a week. A lot of my kind of classmates also were, working part-time, interning, doing research with a faculty member. And the program was really supportive of that. Support if you want to kind of start dipping your toes in these professional places while you're still a student. They were, it was a great place to do that. It didn't feel overwhelming, and they made sure that they were, that I was never overwhelmed. It was really, really helpful, because I wanted to take advantage of like being in New York City and all of the, amazing opportunities there.
Absolutely. And that was something I wish I had started in fall semester, but by, even the opportunities that are available through Columbia were, really extensive. I was a research assistant through the Columbia's Institute for Sustainable Investment, but like in the winter semester. And I was like, oh, I just discovered this would have been like really great to, like, so just definitely would recommend looking at that as well.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to, Elisa, you brought up something that came up in the Q&A, which was the essay and what you wrote your essay on. So would you be able to tell our listeners, our audience, what you wrote your essay on? And I'm going to ask Nikki the same thing, and just because I think to give people a sense of what people actually end up producing at the end of their MA.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely please cut me off because I could just completely hijack this entire webinar and just start talking about my paper. So I will try and be cognizant of the time here, but I think, yeah, that was Rachel's question. And obviously each of our friends had completely different dissertations, which was what was so awesome when you do the whole symposium and you get to see what all of your friends have been working on for like the entire year.
We have a symposium at the end of the year,
Yeah.
Where everyone presents their essays.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of all get your moment, and then you also get to speak on a panel with other, students about, your different ideas and how they relate to each other, because there obviously are a lot of salient threads through people's work. What I specifically focused on was a lot of, natural resource development and the intersection between obviously sort of neoliberal thought underpinning a lot of international investment law and how that works, with modern sort of sustainability goals when it comes to, obviously decarbonizing and, sort of sustainable development and what that myth really entails. And I used a case study of a proposed mine development in Pakistan, which is also where I'm from. So it was just a lot of different threads, and I had a lot of help bringing that dissertation to where it was, like what Beth was mentioning earlier. It's definitely not coddling, and there is a lot of when you're writing your own piece in the beginning, it feels like a sort of insurmountable mountain, but obviously like you have so many resources at your disposal. The idea I even got for that dissertation came from a class that I was taking at the law school. And that professor also, who I ended up researching for, it was just so helpful in putting that, like helping me sort of piece together those ideas that can kind of seem like a jumble in your head until you actually, fast forward to May and you're presenting it. So it was definitely the highlight of the program. So notice.
Yeah, mine was on the status of global translations within the US publishing industry, and specifically posing the question of why there are so few translations of foreign literature that are published here in the US, kind of from a cultural and kind of financial standpoint, why that is. And I ended up interviewing about a dozen or so professionals in the industry, about this question. And so I think it really speaks to kind of the program that I just cold emailed all of these people and was like, I'm a student at Columbia, MA in Global Thought. I'm doing my research on this. Any chance you could take half an hour out of your very busy day to talk to me? I'm not a journalist. This is just research. And the fact that they all said yes and were willing to speak to me for like an hour and, for this paper was really amazing. And so really shows that there's kind of like no limit to what you can do with the project. And it's also been really special for me that now I have published a book and it's being translated in 20 languages. And so it's like this full circle moment for me where that was what I wrote my thesis on. And now years later, kind of I'm living it. And so it's, I think truly like, again, something that only kind of could have happened from this CGT program.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a very, very wide range of topics that I covered in the capstone essay. I'm one student I'm working with this semester is writing about Planet Earth, and it's the documentary series and how the sort of ways in which it portrays nature, and whether that encourages or discourages kind of activism around strengthening environmental laws. Another student is working on the globalization of the High Line, the High Line Park in New York. So there's just some students are working on essays that are much more kind of policy focused. I mean, there's such a wide range, and it really is whatever you want to do. Frankly, I mean, it should be global in some way. I mean, that's sort of the only requirement. And again, yeah, we work very closely with students, who often come in with a very kind of general topic or very big topic, and we figure out like, okay, what kinds of questions can you ask? What kind of case studies can you focus on so that you can sort of speak to this broader issue, but do it in a way that's manageable, where you can actually make an argument and make claims. So one member of the audience asked, how would you describe the intensity of the program? Because it is an intense program. It's 30 credits over the course of 10 months. So in some semesters you might be taking up to 5 classes. And there are many reasons why we have a 1-year program. I mean, for one thing, it certainly makes it more affordable to do a 1-year program rather than a 2-year program. Mm-hmm. I think it also, the program is organized in such a way that so that everyone kind of goes through the core together, over the course of a year. And so it's very coherent in that sense. But Eliza, I mean, what was your experience, in terms of the intensity of the program and how you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a great question. I think everyone sort of experiences that moment when you get to Columbia and you have that imposter syndrome moment of how these are some of the most intellectual and like gifted people you've ever been around in your life. And so there's obviously a lot of, stress that sort of comes with that. But at the same time, it was really exciting to be able to learn with everyone. I did 5 courses in both the fall and the winter semester. And same thing, there are just so many amazing, classes that are offered, obviously through CGT, but like the core and as well, like throughout Columbia. So that was probably why I was like, I wish this program was longer. Like, you get to the end of it and you don't even realize that it's over. But my fall, I definitely overloaded on 5 pretty intense classes. So I think it obviously the workload overall will depend on like how you sort of balance that. If you're taking I had a friend who was doing a lot of doctoral, seminars with 3 to 4, people that were fully doing their PhD, and she was in there. So there was a lot of reading required for those. But again, then you have other people, like I took mostly fairly like seminar reading heavy classes. So that was sort of where the rigor came for me. And obviously that can be you learn to manage it. I think obviously if you've made it through your undergrad, I think the sort of skills that I learned in my 4th year definitely kind of carried over. You get like that initial like freak out moment of how I'm not qualified to be here, kind of you sort of are able to manage that. I think by the end of it, I was like, oh wait, I think, you start to see how other people do their work and you realize that they're not actually that much different to me. So.
Nikki, what about you?
Yeah, I think I had only ever taken 4 courses a semester in all 4 years of undergrad. And so I was a little like nervous about taking 5, but it turned out to be okay. I think as Lisa said, it's about the balance. And so for me, it was balancing some larger lecture courses where you don't have to be like 100% on, every minute of that lecture, you're learning, you're not necessarily like raising your hand the whole time, and then balancing those with the smaller, really heavy discussion seminars. And so just kind of making sure that you are thinking about that. And that's something that like the advisors and the professors help you with, which is really nice. And then it was so much so that then in my 2nd semester, I did 5 classes and the part-time internship. And I think a lot of my, colleagues did the same. And so it's really, it's intense. There's a lot of work. Part of all grad school culture, I think, is like the camaraderie in complaining about how much work there is. But, it was never at any point, overwhelming or made me unable to also kind of take advantage of the fact that like every weekend I would get a $20, Columbia student Broadway ticket and like go, take advantage of those things as well.
Or even just sometimes it kind of settles in where you're like, I'm at Butler, it might be 11 p.m., but this is a beautiful library and I'm at like cool. And then suddenly I'm like, I chose to be here. I really elected to come back and do further study. And like that kind of, it always like humbled me a little bit when I was just starting to get overwhelmed.
Yeah, and again, I mean, as Nikki mentioned, we provide a lot of guidance around, helping you select your courses. We have advising sessions in the summer around course registration, and part of that is about, making sure that you're not taking 5 classes that are going to be, that are all going to be, sort of full steam ahead. Really intensive workloads. There's a course shopping period at Columbia every semester where you can sort of because you have so much choice, right, that you can attend different classes, you can look at the syllabi, you can decide, okay, these classes together will will work in terms of the workload. Okay, we're really at time, so I'm going to answer a couple of questions that are in the Q&A pretty quickly. We have two somewhat related questions about the demographic of the students who are in the program. How young, can someone with many years of job experience, would they be welcome in this program? I mean, yes, we have people at all different levels of their career. We have, as many master's programs are, I mean, it skews a bit younger, people closer to undergrad, but that's certainly not everyone. And we have many people in the program who have had many years of work experience before coming to our program. Another question that we get a lot about, what type of undergraduate degrees are most favorable? And again, there's no one right answer. We have a student in our current cohort who who has a master's in computer science and an undergraduate degree in computer science.
Wow.
So I think the key in your application, right, is to explain why you're interested in this program, right? We're less interested, in saying, okay, you have to have, done a social science degree or a humanities degree. And it's more about saying, how your sort of intellectual trajectory has led you to CGT, right? And what you want to use your degree for, and what you want to study when you're at Columbia. And making the case, right? So, you can come from any disciplinary background. So I'm aware of the time. We're a bit over. I just want to take this last minute to thank our panelists, and especially our alumni, Aliza and Nikki, for so generously giving your time. I think it speaks very well to our program that whenever we ask our alumni to participate in this kind of thing, they jump at the opportunity. And I'll also add, we're going to be following up with everyone who registered for tonight's session with further information and the opportunity to sign up for a one-on-one conversation with me if you have additional follow-up questions. So I hope to hear from all of you out there, and looking forward to seeing people's applications. And again, thank you so much to our panelists, and have a great evening.